This episode of About 30 Minutes is brought to you by First Federal Community Bank. First Federal Community Bank has been serving Northeast Ohio since 1898. With 8 locations in the area, we're always nearby. Whether you are opening your first checking account, planning for retirement, or starting your own business, First Federal offers the modern convenience you expect and the personal service you deserve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to About 30 Minutes, Season 2. We've got ourselves a new set. If you tuned in last year, we've got a little bit of a new look here, and I hope you're enjoying it. This is Chad Shoemaker, and I'm so glad to be here with you today. But even more so, I'm glad to be with our first guest of the new season. We have Mr. Nate Kamban. Welcome aboard, Nate.
Hey,
how are you?
Thanks, man. I'm doing good. It's a beautiful sunny day in Tusk County, so things are going well.
Yes, we can take that absolutely positively. This is it's what first week in March.
Seriously.
So we were talking before we went on that that this could all change very rapidly.
Yeah, and in the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Now, Nate, you are the superintendent for Tuscarawas County Board of Developmental Disabilities.
Yes, that's right. In a role I love. We're serving around 700 people with disabilities throughout the county, really from birth all the way through the end of life. So no day ever looks the same, and just helping more and more folks.
What organizations are associated with that locally? I mean, I know we have several organizations, but are there some in particular that are associated with?
Yeah,
Okay.
One of our biggest programs is early intervention. It's where we send staff into the homes to help kids who are 0 to 3 meet developmental milestones.
Okay.
And then one of our bigger programs is the Starlight School. It's been going through a crazy transformation the past few years, and now we're serving mostly kids with autism. And it's a full house. It's a crazy fun place. A lot of little kids that we're helping get them ready to go to public school.
Okay.
And then we work with provider agencies for adults and help adults to get jobs, find activities they want to do, get them funding, such as Horizon, Starlight Enterprises, Advocates for Success. These are all some of our great partners who we rely on to really get people the chance to live the kind of life they'd like to live.
Yeah, it's very different from, I mean, you look at the way folks with special needs were taken care of many, I just turned 50. And I mean, I can remember growing up, I mean, Starlight was pretty much it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been here forever, and it's
That's
a great
right.
thing. But man, there are so many new programs and everything like that now.
It's so cool. Each provider has their own niche. So if you're interested in employment, there's one that helps you with that. If you're more retirement age, there's a place to get hooked up to help you with those types of activities. It's really just the system has transformed to where we really start by asking people, hey, what do you like to do? Before the conversation would be on, how do we keep you safe?
Right.
Deficit based.
Right.
But now it's all about, what do you want? And let's make it happen.
What type of numbers are we looking at? As you said earlier, how many people?
We're around 700 throughout the county.
700 throughout the county. Do you think you've hit your max with that, or are there
No.
still?
No,
Okay.
every month we're seeing more and more folks come, especially kids. We're seeing more dually diagnosis, mental health, autism type diagnoses, and families just need some guidance. How do we move forward? And what's exciting is families want different things.
Yes.
It's not like it was where they said, I want my child to go do a workshop setting. No, it's, I want my child to find a spouse, find a partner,
Sure.
to find a job that means something to them. People want different things, which is awesome. And so it's a little bit more work, but incredibly more rewarding.
And it's interesting, having come from an education background, I work with special needs kids. I was a regular classroom teacher, but we often would have, special needs kids come into the classroom. But I find it interesting too, that adulthood and later in life is something that a lot of people don't think about.
For sure.
So clearly you had said about, jobs and things like that, and even up through retirement years, those folks just don't grow up and go away.
Yeah.
I mean, and they still, what kind of programs do you have for folks who are older?
Yeah. One of my favorite things that we're working on now is we just got a big grant from the state to develop a technology first home, we're calling it. So we have a home on Doversor Road right outside of Dover, and we're completely retrofitting the house to be technology friendly, meaning an adult with disability or several could live there without any staff that needed to check in on them, because staff would just join via a screen, maybe a few times a day when it was time to take medicine, time to eat, just say, hey man, how are you? Did you get your meds today? Do you need any help? So-and-so's at the door. Do you want them in? The whole house from the oven to the bed is all outfitted with all sorts of different what we call assistive technologies to allow people to live independently. Because, man, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't like having some stranger or staff member just coming into my private space all the time.
No, absolutely not. And that's, I mean, even in the sense of, now I have senior parents and, and I frequently, I worry about their well-being.
Yeah.
I want everything to be good with them. But I mean, they are, just regular folks.
Yeah.
They don't have, necessarily the special needs, but man, I mean, and having somebody available that can help like that.
Yeah, for sure.
That can be tricky.
Yeah.
That can be tricky business.
And we're seeing a workforce shortage really across the nation. This really changes the paradigm because we're not looking for somebody based at the house. They're based out of an IT center, maybe in Canton or someplace outside of here, and they check in without having to have a physical person present. And so it really changes the whole paradigm. I mean, people with disabilities, if they wanted to get married and needed a little bit of help, we could have somebody do some remote support to check in and, live as independently as possible.
It's like independent living with almost like a little guardian angel over your shoulder.
Yeah, which I feel like we all could need sometimes.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
If I could just run my decisions by somebody, that'd be awesome.
Now, you're local.
I am.
And you graduated New Philadelphia?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. Way back in 2005.
Way back. Okay. So, and your initial education took you around the world. Tell me a little bit about how did you go from where you started with, you were explaining to me that a little bit about that before we went on, to where you are. So kind of let's backtrack a little bit here and tell me about what you've been doing.
Yeah, non-traditional story for sure. Man, I can remember way back, I grew up here in Philly, went to East Elementary, and I found the geography section, I remember as a little kid, and my mind was just blown. I was like, oh my goodness, there's these people just like us, but they believe a different God, they talk a different language, their government's different. So I was this weird kid on the playground wanting to talk to my friends about, I don't know, the Kuwaiti royal system while they're, busy worrying about baseball. So
right.
I learned quickly it wasn't a great topic of conversation. But I just always had a passion and interest in, international things, languages, etc. Got to have some exposure in high school and really confirmed that, I wanted to work overseas and became really interested, especially in the third world kind of economic situation and how could I develop a skill set to be useful in a context like that. It really began with a trip to the Philippines, and I was exposed to abject poverty for the first time, and it blew my mind. It didn't settle right. I never quite got past that experience of seeing poverty at that level, but yet matched with such resilience and grace and joy. I really got hooked. And so I did my undergrad at Mount Union, where I studied international relations and French and Japanese. And through that time period, I really became interested in sub-Saharan Africa. I learned that many countries in Africa are French-speaking because they are former French colonies.
Sure.
And some of those countries are the poorest of the world. Countries like Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Chad, etc. And so I took some time and went to France and lived with the host family. And that was a wild experience. My French wasn't very good at first. It was just total immersion at a French university, and incredibly valuable, to see a totally different way of living, operating in a different language all day. And Europe just blew my mind, just the beauty and the culture. And was really preparing myself to work in Africa. Continued in graduate school at the University of Pittsburgh, studying international development and environmental sustainability. In that part of the world, the environment has a big impact on the harvests, on people's sustainability. You change the climate a bit or less rain, and it has a huge detrimental impact.
As I say, a lot of your third world folks, especially those in poverty, they depend upon the land.
They do 100%, and slight variations can mean a year where you eat well, or a year where quite literally in one community they ate locusts. A bad harvest. And so in graduate school, I worked in D.C. a bit at the Office of African Nations at the U.S. Treasury Department, learning about economics and going to the World Bank and understanding how some of these nations were just debt-ridden to the World Bank, huge loans, and just some of those issues. And it was at a crazy time. I remember I could look through my office and see into the White House. My wife came with me. We just got married. We were small town folks here. We were learning the subway. We thought we were so cool. So cool.
Well, I've been on the DC subways before, so that's a trip.
Yeah, we thought we were, top shelf right then and there. But then after that experience, I remember getting on monster.com and just searched Africa, found a job at a university that was funded by a grant from the Hilton Foundation, like Hilton Hotels. And it was really it was a perfect fit where my wife was based at the university and I was gone in Africa, the exact countries I wanted to work. My job was fully bilingual, English, French. And it was all about working with people with disabilities and engineers to make communities more accessible. So you think about ADA accessibility here, right?
Right.
In Africa and many places, there's no such thing.
Right.
And so to access something like the village well or the village latrine, it's all steps. If you have any kind of physical impairment, man, sorry.
Yeah.
And in some of the rural places, if a woman couldn't fetch water for her family, her likelihood of ever getting married is almost zero.
Right.
And so we were doing these simple modifications through engineering technology to make communities more accessible. But it really started high level with the government first, of trying to explain why it's important to include people with disabilities, that they are more than someone you give your tithes to in a religious sort of experience, or you give charity. They can be fully functioning members of your community.
If you enable them.
Yes. And give them a voice.
Right.
So it was a lot of community-based, government-based work, and we started in the country of Mali, spanned into Niger, Ghana, then into Kenya, Ethiopia, Zambia, Malawi, South Africa, and it was just an incredible time.
Wow.
Really out of my comfort zone.
I would say, my gosh, I think about, those are the places, having grown up in the 80s, especially I remember the famine in Ethiopia, and seeing that kind of stuff. And thinking, oh my gosh, I can't believe anybody could live like that. But the idea that here comes Nate Kamban to attempt to help alleviate that in a way that, I'll be honest, accessibility like that, never would have even thought about it.
Yeah, me neither before I went. It was a huge barrier.
Because I'm sure that that health concerns that would be trivial here can be
100%.
dramatically different over there.
100%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite an experience. During that time, we had 2 kids, and I remember it was year 4, and they asked me to go to Sierra Leone, and that was when the Ebola outbreak was taking place.
Oh, my.
And they said, hey, you'll be 30 kilometers from the epicenter, but you should be okay. And that was the first time, because before we were dealing in dangerous environments. There's a lot of jihadism, some unrest with the fall of Libya and that part of the world. But Ebola was really tough for us as a family to process. Does this make sense? And so after that 4.5 years, we said, well, let's go to Tusk. I have a background in French and international economics. Let's see what happens from there.
Right. Now, just before we leave overseas, is there any particular event or something that you assisted with that really leaves a mark in your mind? Something that's a real positive memory about
For sure.
Others?
Yeah, I think one of the most impactful memories I was in, it was the Sahara, very dusty, arid region of Mali in the north of the country, near a place called Timbuktu, which is a real place.
Oh, yes.
And we went to a very rural village asking to meet with people with disabilities. And often when we would first come, they would say, well, there's nobody here. Because there was a bit of a stigma still towards people with disabilities that perhaps they were born because of a sin that the parents committed or disability being contagious, just some unfortunate stigmas that have carried on. And so at first they'd say, no, there's nobody here. But when you'd go door to door, you'd meet some parents who were brave enough, to show you their child.
Right.
And I was meeting with a mom and a grandma lived together with a young man with a disability, mostly impairments in his extremities and his legs and arms. He was maybe 13, and I was interviewing the mom and grandma. Tell me about his day. What can he do? Does he go to school? What is he like? And, it was very just a raw conversation, but very deficit-based. Well, we don't let him out of this home because we're afraid the other neighbors might hurt him because he has a disability. He doesn't go to school. We do total care. He, essentially kind of like a burden conversation. And so after that very sad conversation, I looked over in the corner and this young man was on the ground, the dusty ground in his little home. And he had this series of wires And we're like way out in the bush, like no electricity, nothing like that. Running water, of course not. He had all of these wires hooked up, and there was this board with what looked like LED lights. And when he got these wires like in the perfect like system, all lined up against this battery, I assume, the whole board just lit up. And I'll never forget it, because I thought here everyone had assessed what he can do, which was very little.
Not much, right?
To anything.
Right.
But here, man, this guy, I mean, in a different context, could he have been an electrical engineer? I mean, who knows if he got that investment?
Right.
What he could do.
Well, I mean, looking at that from an educational sense, you know, again, I taught, I was a science teacher, that kind of thing. That's the kind of stuff that, you know, that is where the not to be, you know, make a pun or anything, but that's where the spark begins.
Yeah.
I mean, you have something like that, and you're like, oh, I wonder how this works. I wonder what happens if I do this. And he's just sitting there and nobody's acknowledging.
Nobody.
That's amazing.
And it just struck me to think, you know, how many people with disabilities live like that.
Right.
Where they're essentially known for maybe the worst thing that happened in their life. Their disability, they're not known because they're creative or they have a knack for electronics.
Right.
You know, in that context, he wasn't called by his name. He was called essentially the one with the bad legs in his language.
Oh my.
But, you know, maybe he could have been, hey, the dude who's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. No
You know?
kidding. And I mean, it's, wow, that's really something. You know, I'm one that believes that everybody has a strong point, something that they're really good at.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a matter of finding
Yep.
it, you know.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, now, so you came back here to Tuscarawas County.
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, and we weren't quite sure what to do. We just knew, you know, we both grew up here. My wife was from the Tippecanoe, Denison area, and me here in Philly, and we just had great memories.
Was this the first time then your kids had been back?
Yeah,
they had been abroad the whole time.
They had been, with us. They'd not lived in Tusk, and just besides, you know, visits here and there, and we missed family. I missed the little things like going to the park. I missed the sense of community. I missed, you know, I was learning and giving in so many other places, and my heart was always here. I always felt like kind of torn in half, that I loved overseas things, but I was also super grounded and knew I would be Tusk County for life, you know, part of me as well. And so came back with all these degrees and things not really relevant. But my dad was gracious enough to let me work with him for a little bit. And then a job opened at the Board of Developmental Disabilities. And I just had this new passion of working with people who have cognitive disabilities, and what just an incredible honor and it is to work with them and see their potential unleashed and, you know, push that envelope of what's possible. It's something I'm maybe good and bad at, is I've always got to push the envelope. Yeah. And that's what brought us home.
It's really something. I mean, because when I initially was reading over your little kind of mini biography that we were sent, I'm thinking, how does this guy go from being, you know, in these third world countries to here, you know, and then you tell me what your degree is, and I'm like, that's a total disconnect to me. But now, I mean, it makes total sense. Yeah. You know, helping people is helping people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody were to want to go this path that you have done with either on the international scale or even locally, what's the best way to get into something like this where you are helping the developmentally disabled?
Gosh, I think the best way is direct experience. We have so many homes in this community or opportunities at the Starlight School where we need just bodies, people who are willing to do the hard work of helping to take care of people. And just really develop that passion. You know, we have opportunities at the Starlight School to teach art to the kids, crafts. And what I've often see is you know pretty quickly whether or not it's your thing. And if it is, it's pretty quick that you fall in love with this population. It might not be verbal, but the way the kids love you, the way that you bring joy to them. I mean, you can go to one of the providers that work with adults with disabilities and instantly feel like a celebrity. It's really hard to have a bad day when you work with people with disabilities. They have a raw contentness, joy that sometimes gets lost on us who don't. Yes. And a perspective that is so clear sometimes, and it can be incredibly refreshing.
Yeah. It's almost enviable.
Yeah.
I know that, when I was still in the classroom, and we would have our developmentally disabled kids come in, and some of them were just, they were just the happiest, most positive people. And they were glad to see everybody.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, if I could just harness that, even if it was just for 24 hours, it would be really something.
For sure.
So what are some of the things, now you talk about somebody finding out very quickly if that is for them or not.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that are sometimes tough to deal with? In this job?
Yeah. So a lot of the kids we work with who have autism, their disability can manifest in very aggressive manners. So when they're frustrated, just like you and I would get frustrated, we could use our voice. We would have maybe some other coping skills, know we need to walk away or do something different. For some of the kiddos we serve, that's not there. So it'll come out as, quickly aggressive. Yes. And, as they're dysregulated, maybe there's a sound somewhere in the classroom that's really bothering them, or someone's perfume is just driving them nuts, where you and I could maybe have the ability and the coping skills to walk away or change what we're doing. Some of our kiddos, they don't quite have that yet. And so it can get aggressive, it can get violent. And you have to separate the kid from the behavior that this isn't driven because they're disobedient. It's often related to their diagnosis. Right. And that can be tricky to, differentiate in the moment when somebody's, smacking you in the head.
It seems like the diagnoses for autism, I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, again, having come from education, it's on the rise.
Yeah, for sure.
And we still don't really understand why.
Yeah.
I mean, because, I was in school a little over 30 years ago. I graduated, and, it just seemed like that wasn't as big of an issue as it is now. So, and it's just, and you had mentioned earlier that this is a field where there aren't enough people to help.
Yeah, definitely not. And I think we've become really good at being able to diagnose it early on, which is great, because it really can have a huge impact on the whole outcome of their life. Right. Getting things like speech language pathology, technology to communicate, coping mechanisms through physical therapy, occupational therapy. And really what we're striving to do at my agency is bring the Cadillac level of services. That's where we want to be here in Tusk. For too long, our families have had to travel outside of this community to Canton, Columbus, Cleveland to get services, and I've had enough of that. Yeah. Families in Tusk should be able to get what they need. Right. And so that's led us down a crazy journey of changing our school to be a very high therapeutic intensive therapy zone for kids who are struggling in the public school, bringing in new experts from outside of the community. We just bought 2 or 3 homes to house some kids whose intensity is so high, they'd otherwise be living in a residential facility, maybe in Florida. Oh my gosh. We've had kids in Arkansas. And man, our dream is to build that infrastructure here so families can stick together so that we can serve them better. It's hard to serve a kid who's in Florida. Sure. And so that's been kind of a trajectory, a passion.
Have you had parents seek you out? Have you had parents that have had maybe something that was really unusual that you hadn't seen before that needed to be addressed that you found success with?
Yeah, we've just found in the past we saw so many families, by the time we got to them, it was implosion mode. It was like, we've got to get the child out of here. We can't sustain as a family. And so what we've really tried to do is back that timeline up before it gets to explosion point. And one of the key things that we found is helpful is trauma-informed care. And so it's a whole new lens of looking at someone. You start by really doing what is called a trauma biographical timeline, looking at somebody's whole story. What's led to this breakdown point? And so we have staff who are trained in that to really understand trauma and the impact trauma can have on a brain, on a kid, even a small kid, if something happens that's significant, and how it can manifest even years later. Sure. And so that has just been a radical change. And I think it's built compassion in us as people working in the system, because you start to see the complexity and the depth of some people's story. And sadly, people with disabilities, their rates of trauma and abuse are much higher than in the standard population because they're oftentimes more vulnerable. And so that shift in paradigm and mindset, I think, has been one of the most worthwhile things we've done to better help families just by stopping and just, hey man, what's your story?
Yeah.
What happened
Listening.
here? Yeah. Tell me what was hard.
Right.
Yeah.
That's something. I mean, it's having that ability to sit down and talk with somebody else. I mean, those of us who don't experience don't think of it.
For
you
sure.
know?
For sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now we talked about volunteering. Any hoops that you have to jump through or red tape that goes with that if you would like to volunteer?
Yeah, just some background checks that we do for folks. It's not too extensive, but just to make sure, we're getting folks who don't have any kind of grievous issue to keep folks safe. But
okay. Different facilities here where volunteers are welcome. Where could people go?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Starlight School, the Board of DD main office, I'm sure all the providers in the community would be jumping up for joy for folks to come in. Those would be Starlight Enterprises, Advocates for Success, Horizons, Stepping Stone in the Twin Cities. There's about 10 of these agencies throughout the community.
Excellent. And everybody's interconnected.
Yes, very much so.
That's awesome. Can you give me a quick plug here for, as we're winding down, contacting? If somebody wants to get in touch with you or somebody wants to get in touch with one of those organizations, what's the best way to do it?
Yeah, I would say the best way is to contact the Board of Disabilities. Our number is 330-308-7173. Carrie Silverthorne, a lot of folks know her in the community. She's our outreach coordinator. She handles all the volunteering efforts, and she's easily found on our website, which is tuskbdd.org.
Okay. tuskbdd.org. All right, very good. Tell me a little bit about you and the non-English speaking community here in Tuscarawas County. What can you tell me about that?
Oh my God, this has been life-changing. It really has. I mean, I could speak for days on this. Moving back here from, working overseas, working in the city, something that kind of made me sad or apprehensive was the lack of diversity. Just that you can get when you're in a more urban area, and what it meant to me to raise my kids in a more diverse space, that was important. And even when you're in the cities, you can get food from, wherever, and, some of those things. And then when we moved back here and our kids went to public school kind of in the middle of the year, and strangely, or maybe not strangely, most of their friends came from the Latino community. I think they maybe understood what it was like to be new. And little by little, we started making inroads with the families. And this whole new world was unlocked to us here in Tusk County. I mean, being invited to first birthdays for a Latino family is, so fun. Cookouts. We were at a party recently where the grandma kept bringing us more and more spicy tamales because she thought it was hilarious watching us try to eat it. They've become friends of our families of our family that we've invited to our house for football games. We've taken them to Quaker games and share holidays. And I mean, it's just, it makes me want to cry. I can't even tell you. And I just went through a tremendous health diagnosis. I was just diagnosed about 2 years ago with incurable stage 4 lung cancer, which was crazy and shocking. Nothing really sparking that, like smoking, et cetera. And the way these families rallied around us, they didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
And the sense of community that you find within the Latino population is huge.
Yeah.
And it's changed our world. And it breaks my heart sometimes if people, maybe discount them, or why are they here? Or, man, it's diversity. It's exposure right here in our community.
Right. I mean, it comes down to that simple idea that, people are people.
Yeah.
And just
love their
showing
families.
Kindness and just, doing the right thing by somebody can make a world of difference.
It changes everything, and it's been impactful.
Are your kids, do your kids speak multiple languages too?
Oh, we do French at home. That was kind of my passion language, but now, my heart's being swayed towards Spanish. I never thought I'd say the day. I never thought I'd see the day. I feel like I'm betraying, the motherland a little bit.
Oh my gosh. Well, I tell you what, it's an amazing story, and I know we could go a lot longer.
Yeah.
But it has been about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
thanks so much.
One more time, let's do another quick plug. How can we get a hold of local establishments to help?
Yeah, I'd say the County Board of Disabilities are always looking for folks. Phone number is 330-308-7173. And tuskbdd.org has all of our staff. And My friend Carrie Silverthorne, she'll get your foot in the door before you say go.
That's excellent and very, very, very good. Before we leave here today, tell me within the you were talking, and this made me think. I'm a big tamale fan.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So within the Latino community, give me a favorite food.
Oh, papusas. Oh
what
my
is that?
gosh, they're like gnocchi mixed with quesadillas, with meat and cheese. These little stuffed noodly things with spicy. Oh my, it's heaven. It's absolutely for real heaven, and it's all available in Tusk. You just got to make some friends. Just got to make some friends.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the authentic style.
This is authentic backdoor version. It's amazing.
Awesome. Okay. Well, Nate, thank you so much for being
no
with
worries.
us today.
Appreciate it.
And folks, we hope you enjoyed this episode. Make sure to keep an eye on us here and find out when the next one is. Till then, we will see you another day. This episode of About 30 Minutes was brought to you by First Federal Community Bank. First Federal Community Bank has been serving Northeast Ohio since 1898. With 8 locations in the area, we're always nearby. Whether you are opening your first checking account, planning for retirement, or starting your own business, First Federal offers the modern convenience you expect and the personal service you deserve. Live Tusk strives to create a community of young adults living and or working in Tuscarawas County, Ohio, by assisting opportunities for social interaction and networking. We provide an awareness about the resources, activities, events, art, outdoor rec, education, and career opportunities in Tuscarawas County to encourage positive engagement about the quality of life in this area. We believe in a future where our community is a beacon of opportunity, known for its strong sense of belonging and exceptional quality of life. Our City Productions is a one-stop shop for professional quality and affordable video production, photography, social media management, and video conversion and archiving. Be sure to visit us at ourcityproductions.com and follow us on Facebook.